A former US president once said, "Our long national nightmare is over." And that's kind of how I feel about the Spider Man spin off movies. All right, what's up, everybody? So I came across this article in Variety recently. It was an interview with Sony CEO Tom Rothman, who just recently took over. And so far, I've really liked any time he's made any public statements. He's been very forthright, very honest, and very real about the state of the studio and any of the projects that they've been working on and what direction they want to go in the future. At CinemaCon, he said something about basically calling out the movie theater owners, saying how, look, your ticket prices are too high and you got to ask for, and I know we need to make better movies, but also the theatrical window needs to be longer. And he was just giving them the business as far as like what has to be done to make the movie theater experience as well as making movies great again, for the lack of a better way of expressing that idea. And in this particular interview, they're talking about a lot of different things. And of course, Spider-Man's going to come up because Sony owns the rights to the Spider-Man character, and they basically have shared custody with Disney Marvel. So that way Marvel can make their Spider-Man movies over there with Tom Holland and people. And Sony gets a cut. At the same time, they decided to make, these other Spider-Man adjacent movies, where now they're changing the villain to kind of make them an anti-hero or, a hero in a different kind of format of some kind. And even though I really enjoyed the first Venom movie, I'm a huge Tom Hardy fan and I'll watch anything he does, but the quality of the rest of them are, very suspect. And man, let's not talk about the other ones, Morbius, Kraven, Madam Web. I think we all know and are very honest and cognizant about the quality of those movies or lack thereof. But when they asked him about it, he was like, "Yeah, we don't have anything scheduled." It's like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. You know, the quality of those movies is just unfortunately very, very low. And really what it does is just piss off the audience. And he even said in that interview that, hey, the audience in the end is kind of the boss. If they don't want this, then they're not going to go see it. They're not going to take their time. They're not going to spend the money. And so what are we going to be left with? So what is the point of actually continuing to make more of these things that nobody wants to watch? And that's like, it's crazy how when you compare the Spider-Man movies that Marvel has made to these Spider-Man spin-offs that Sony continued to pump out, it's like, why are you doing this? It's obvious that you can make a good movie because, all of the Spider-Man movies are varying levels of good. So then what is your problem, basically? And so there are some running theories, though I think the most plausible one is that the way that Sony continues to own the rights to the Spider-Man character is if a Spider-Man movie or Spider-Man adjacent movie gets produced, every year, 2 years. I don't know the exact details of that. But even when Marvel makes a Spider-Man movie, the owner rights still are renewed to Sony. But it's also renewed every time they make a Morbius, a Venom, a Madam Web. So you can kind of see how, yes, it could be a money grab. At the same time, that's not really garnering goodwill with an audience, with moviegoers, because once they see that it's a Spider-Man spin-off based on the history, it's like, oh, that's going to suck. I'm not going to go watch it. And yes, they will reap the rewards of whatever the Marvel universe is doing with the Spider-Man movie, but they're just digging themselves in a deeper hole as far as, at some point, Sony Pictures was like, oh, let's go watch a Sony Pictures movie. They're great. But now they're just going to have that stamp of Sony Pictures. Oh, they just make whatever. so they can make some money off of this other thing. And so Tom Rothman's like, all right, look, we're done with that. Thankfully so. It's nice to have an adult in the room that can actually speak to others like they are adults. Because like when I compare him to somebody like Robert Iger, the head of Disney, especially when he came back, it was a lot of kind of vagaries, trying not to piss anybody off necessarily, instead of just being honest with what the state of the situation is and what the plan needs to be going forward. At least with Tom Rothman, he's like, all right, movie theater owners, you got to do better. And yes, we as movie studios have to do better. Let's work so that way we can all win. Movie studio wins, movie theater owners win, and more importantly, the moviegoers win because they get to spend their money and enjoy doing it because they're spending it on something that is worth it. Good story, great characters that can, make them forget about everyday life, make them aspire, make them feel something, as David Fincher, once famously said. So I'm all for anything that Tom Rothman is spitting these days, and I'm liking the moves that he's making. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, click subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.